My reading experience was sabotaged by my child, but it wasn't for me. I don't know what I was expecting, but I don't think it was this. Hello and welcome back to the chaos that is Shani and Books. Kian's reading a book in the background, so excuse that noise. But today I am reading to you a video that I've been working on since the first day of January, and that is reading a booktuber's favorite. I did this video last year and found a few favorites that made it into my own favorites list. So of course I'm doing it again this year. Basically, I'm sure you're aware of the concept. There are a lot of YouTubers now doing this.
Mine.
Okay, I got interrupted already. What was I saying? Yes, loads of YouTubers do this type of video. The concept is very simple because at the end of each year / the beginning of the new year, when booktubers are coming out with their favorites list of the year, basically I'm going to be reading books that appeared on people's favorites list. Last year when I did this, I had the rule that if I already owned a book, it automatically made it into the video. And then I think I had one book that was a book that I hadn't heard of, and I chose 15. So this year I'm doing a similar thing. I have 15 books again, but I have 3 separate categories. I'm trying to get my brain in order to do this intro fast because the video is going to be long. So the first category is books that were already on my shelf, and I've capped that this year at 5 books. So I kind of just selected either books that I thought I was going to enjoy or books that this video was going to push me to get to read them so that they don't sit on my shelf for like 5 more years. The second category is the books that had the most mentions, so appeared on the most amount of people's list, and that also had 5 books in that category. And then the third is books that I hadn't heard of, which that's a loose definition. And again, that was 5 books to round out the 15. So yeah, it was books that I hadn't heard of / I'd only heard of from that particular booktuber / I'd kind of heard about it, but that booktuber's favorites is what pushed me to want to pick it up. Because I saw a thing that said like you have to hear about a book like 7 times or like 11 times or something like that before you like remember it enough. So I don't know, I probably had heard of these books in passing before, or on that particular booktuber's channel or on another booktuber's channel. But yeah, it's hadn't heard of before, but realistically it's like that person's video is what made me want to pick it. Let's just get into the books because this is gonna take me forever. Okay, first up, let's talk about books that were already on my shelf. So the first one, I was very excited to be able to include this booktuber this year. Oh, by the way, apologies if a book was mentioned on a different booktuber's list and I don't include them. When I was taking notes for this video, as we know, I have a toddler and I have a chaotic life. So I'm sorry if I missed out a particular booktuber. I just picked whoever's favorites list fit for this video / whoever's favorites list I was watching and had a pen and paper ready to take notes, because some people's favorites, I watched them and I wasn't taking notes, and then I might have forgotten what books were on the list. So I apologize if one of these books was on someone else's list and I don't mention that actual person, but I'm doing my best. Anyway, back to the books. Yes, I was very excited to be able to include this booktuber because I didn't get to last year because I didn't have the favorites out last year when I was doing my video, and I love them. And that is April from Aprilius Maximus, and the book is The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. I'm not going to give you synopsises because I will talk about the books in a second in the actual vlog portion. The next book that was already on my shelf that I've chosen for this video is Open Water, and this one was on Jan's favorites list. Next up is The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett, and this one was on Janini's favorites list. Next up, Black Girl Unlimited was on Deja's favorites list. And lastly, for books that were already on my shelf, Family of Liars was on Hayley Hughes's favorites list. Next up, let's do the books I hadn't heard of / not on my radar. Let's just call it not on my radar section. First up, The Stationery Shop of Tehran, which I've also seen covers that just say The Stationery Shop, but this was on Chloe's favorites list. Next is Milk Blood Heat, which was on Noelle Gallagher's favorites of the year. Next is Hex, which is on Jodie's favorites list. And the last 2 books are from the same person's list. I actually had a different book, but I've subbed it out for another one because I thought it might have been too heavy for me to read. And I'm kind of glad I did because I have a lot of sad books that I've read from the beginning of the year. But the first one is Miss I Sandwich, which is on Alison's favorites of the year. And also from Alison, I have chosen The 5 Wounds. The last section is the books with the most mentions. First in this section, this book could have been on my already owned part. But because it got so many mentions, I switched it to this one so that I could fit in more books that were already on my shelf. But technically I did already have this one anyway. But Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin was on a fair few people's lists. I'm sorry if I miss out anyone. I tried to keep track of them, but there's so many favorites list videos to watch and it was overwhelming. But this was on Sid Bookworm's, Naomi's Library, Alison Page's, and Mikla Reed's favorites of the year list. By the way, I also included people's like honorable mentions when I took the tally for this. So yeah, it's just if it was mentioned anywhere in their video. Next up, We Spread by Ian Reid, and this one was on Jan's list, Gabby's list, Kayla, Books and Lala's honorable mentions video, and Cami from Burrows and Books list. Then we have How High We Go in the Dark, and this one was in Sid Bookworm's favorites, April East Maximus's favorites, and Kayla, Books and Lala's favorites. And then Our Wives Under the Sea was in Sid Bookworm's list, Noelle Gallagher's, Books and Lala, and Jack Edwards' list. And then lastly, I think this is the one with the most mentions, but I'll be reading Legends and Lattes, the very popular book that just got so much hype last year, so I was not surprised that it was on so many people's list. But the people that I saw that I took notes, I'm sure there were more people. I'm so sorry. Sid, Michaela, Allison, Riley, Lexi, Noelle 7 Pages. And I'm also going to be including my friend Sash Reed. She didn't post her favorites of like general fiction, she posted romance favorites, but I know that this was one of her favorite books of the year because she's my friend and I asked her. So I'm including her in this because she's a booktuber as well. She just didn't post her favorite. So, and that makes this one the most mentioned book within this video that I'm doing. So those are the 15 books that I'm going to be reading for this video. I'm obviously filming this intro at the end after I've already done the vlog. But yeah, let's cut into the vlogs to see which of these books I enjoyed and whether or not I can find myself a new favorite by taking the recommendations of others. Okay, we are off to a huge success for this video with this book because this is 5 stars. This is probably gonna end up like my favorites of the year. I can see why it made so many people's favorites of last year. If you're not someone who's interested in video games, then you probably aren't going to enjoy this as much. Maybe you still will, but yeah, this is following these characters that create this video game and we're just jumping back and forth throughout different times of their life. And I don't know, I just loved it. What does the synopsis even say? Yes, spanning 30 years. It says, yes, it is. Hey, baby. Okay, you can read it. Look, we knew my life was chaotic, but didn't mean to start off the video this chaotic. When I was editing, I realized that Kian interrupted me and I never finished or refilmed the clip. But just know that I gave this book 5 stars and I did enjoy it. So there's that for you. I knew you long before. This video is off to an amazing start because I just finished reading this book actually a few days ago. I haven't filmed my update. What do I even say about this book? I did want to reread the first 2 in the series because I read them a few years ago and I don't really remember it. I don't really remember my thoughts exactly. I remember vaguely what happens in the book, but not my exact thoughts. But I didn't have time to do that, and so I jumped straight into this one. And from what I remember of the other 2, I definitely enjoy this one the most. Are you shushing me? I have so many parts of this that I have annotated and related to. How do I talk about this book without discussing a range of things in my life that I don't think I want to put on the internet yet? I don't know. Let me start by telling you what this book is about. We are getting 2 perspectives in this book. It is a romance and it is definitely a lot darker than the first 2 books or what I remember them being. In the beginning of this book, our main character is breaking up, I guess, with her boyfriend. Her boyfriend comes to her and says that he wants to have an open relationship because he needs to make sure that he wants to be with her. So he wants to go and sleep with other people to make sure it truly is her that he wants to be with. And she obviously does not want that, but because he is going to do that, she decides to sign up for a dating app and try to have a one-night stand. Through the dating app, she meets our other main character, and given that this is a romance, I guess you can guess what's going to happen. They try to have a one-night stand, but they end up falling in love. Definitely look up the trigger warnings for this book. Like I said, it does deal with some very dark topics, including a lot of illnesses with various characters. But our main character, Anna, is also dealing with a lot in herself as well as her family and personal life, because her therapist suggests to her that she thinks that she is on the autism spectrum. So she is coming to terms with that within herself, learning more about what that means for her, and then having to come out and tell people in her life about this diagnosis. I'm definitely still not a romance girly. So if this exact plotline had been in a book that was not specifically the romance genre, I think I probably would have enjoyed it more. But I'm still going to give it 5 stars. And I'm still going to reread the first 2 books because I do want to go back into them and see whether my ratings that I originally gave them are still correct. This one, in the author's note, I read that she wrote this one in first person because this is a very personal story to her. She said it's almost like a memoir, so the other ones were written in third person and she felt like this one should be written in first person. I don't even know what I'm saying and he's distracting me in the background, so I'm gonna go and read the next book for this video. It's blurry. Okay, great. Okay, I think it's safe to say that I need to do this video every single year, or even if I'm not doing it for a video, I need to just read Booktubers favorites at the beginning of every year for the rest of time, because I have a new favorite book and I don't want to get too ahead of myself and call it now, but I feel like this could be in my own favorites of 2023 and we're only in January. I really loved this, and I think I need to pick up historical fiction more. For some reason I think I don't like it, but I do. This one, I'm sure you've heard it pitched many times before because it is a very popular book and clearly for good reason, so I don't know why I was putting it off so much. I actually got gifted this book 2 times, so obviously I'm not the only one who thought that I was going to like this if I got gifted it 2 times. But basically it is about this really small town that is so small that it's not on any maps, and these 2 twin girls who are descendants of the founder of this town, and the town is pretty racist. They don't really fit in and are accepted into the white community, but they also don't want to be treated like black people, and they all really try and stay as white as possible. Like I said, this is a historical fiction, so this is set in quite a different time to the one we live in now. And like I said, there are twins who are descended from the founder, and when they are 16, they just disappear one day. And we're going kind of throughout a bunch of different times throughout their lives, as well as their daughters' lives, because the sisters want to escape this town that they don't like. Clearly, it's not the nicest, but the twins end up going their separate ways, and one twin ends up marrying a black man and has to leave him after he becomes abusive. So she goes with her daughter, who is very dark-skinned, and the only place she can think to go is back to the town that she hasn't been back to since she was 16, and go back to her mother. The town obviously haven't seen the missing twins since they left, so they're pretty shocked for her to return. The second twin ends up marrying a white man and is white passing, so he thinks that she's white, and so yeah, she's living the life of a white woman and not telling her husband about where she came from or her past. She also ends up having a daughter who is obviously raised as white, and they are living in a very rich suburb. And so like I said, it's following these women's stories over like 40 years as well as their daughters, and it obviously touched on themes of racism, clearly. There was also a trans character, which I didn't expect to be in here, and this was just, yeah, I really liked how it was written, and it was really interesting, and the way that it touched on race as well. Race and genetics is always something that is very interesting to me, being someone who is mixed race, and I am, I guess, pretty white passing. People's opinions on race is very interesting. The amount of people that, it's usually depending on how my hair is cut, is dependent on whether I get these comments or not, but a lot of times people throughout my life have assumed that I'm not white and find the need to ask me. So it is interesting about thinking about how, I don't know, people perceive you and your race. I don't know, I'm just kind of rambling now, but I really enjoyed this. I absolutely loved it, and I am so glad that I finally got to it. It also reminded me of a couple of my other favorite books, so if anyone is interested, this is not the same genre. This is a non-fiction book, but My Place by Sally Morgan, says on the top, an Australian classic. This is her memoir, and she and her siblings were not told that they were Aboriginal Australians, and her mother and grandmother in the beginning of their lives were lying to them, and yeah, just because they were trying to avoid, I guess, the racism in the country, were either passing as another race or pretty much anything other than Aboriginal Australian. This is really interesting, and I feel like a lot of Australians should read this. But that one is obviously not fiction, but a fiction book that I also thought had some similar vibes is The White Girl by Tony Birch, which this is also an Aboriginal Australian author. And this one is a historical fiction, so it is the same genre as Vanishing Half. And this one is a grandmother who, her daughter had a baby, and then the daughter disappears and the grandmother is left to raise the baby. And the grandmother is Aboriginal, but the baby, I mean, given the title, is white passing. So this is an Australian historical fiction. So we are getting a glimpse of a time in our country where it wasn't great for Indigenous Australians, and the grandmother sets off to basically just do whatever she can to protect herself and her granddaughter, because welfare was removing Aboriginal children from parents, and given that the young girl is quite white passing. If you're familiar with the stolen generation in Australia, very sad, but yeah, this actually has very similar vibes to me. I haven't read this in a while. I should probably reread it because it is a favorite of mine, but it felt similar to me to The Vanishing Half. So if you enjoyed this and you're interested in an Indigenous Australian story that gives similar vibes, or if you're interested in the memoir that touches on similar themes, those are some recommendations. But yes, basically I'm just incredibly happy that I read this. I want to apologize to this book because I didn't love it, but I should have loved it, and it's not the book's fault. Let me explain my reading experience with this book. As you can see, this is a very short book, and it has taken me the whole month, almost the whole month, to read this book, which is ridiculous because it's so short. I don't know if you can hear in the background a child, but that child is part of the reason why it took me so long to read this book. For some reason, every time I had this book in my hand, Kian would interrupt me. I don't think I made it through an entire page in full without being stopped and interrupted. Didn't happen to any of the other books. I've read multiple books in between starting and finishing this one. If I had that book in my hand, it was fine. I was able to read. It was all good. For some reason, every time I picked up this book in particular, Kian would need something, and I couldn't make it through a page. I kept reading paragraphs over and going, no, I've read this. My reading experience was sabotaged by my child, and I want to apologize to this book because this is the type of book where you need to just sit and be immersed in the characters and the writing. It's very short, clearly, and I feel like that type of reading experience is what you need because you're only getting such a short glimpse into these characters in this life. But I could not get into it because every time I picked it up, he needed a drink, he needed something to eat, he wanted me to do something, he wanted me to get something. So not to be superstitious, but this book was cursed for me, and I apologize to this book because this is something I should have loved, but I did not love it at all because I couldn't get fully into it, and I feel like that's what it needs. It is two black characters and their art and their love for each other, and there was some very good writing, but I feel like I don't know how to explain it. Have you ever just read a book and you just couldn't, I don't know, you just couldn't get into it, but it's not the fault of the book. It's my child's fault. So I apologize. I need to reread this at another time, which shouldn't be hard because it's so short, but now is not the time because I'm being superstitious and I think this book is cursed. So I need to move on to other things because I've been reading this book since like the first week of January, and we're almost at the end of January, and I just need to move on. I'm sorry. I did finish this book, but I kept losing my place. It was... Yeah, I see. You want me to have it? Okay, thank you. I can't even talk about this book without being interrupted. Hi, I'm gonna go. And hopefully I'll have a better update for you in the next book. I apologize. I apologize to this book and to anyone who likes this book. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I have finished this book. It's been a while and I haven't updated, and I want to acknowledge that I think that this book was not intended for me. I did give the original book We Were Liars 5 stars when I first read it. That was a few years ago now given, but I even have this deluxe edition. I think it's even signed. Yep, it's signed. So I want to preface this by saying I did enjoy this when I read it, because I did see some reviews of people reading this book and saying they hated the first book and yet they still picked up this one, which I don't agree with that, because this book is definitely just for fans of We Were Liars that want more from the family, to learn more about the family, more about the backstory, more about this island. And I don't really think, even though I enjoyed the first book, I don't think I fit into that category of people. Do we need the light here? Is that better? It's way better. So this book, I think I am done forever with young adult mysteries. Is this categorized as a mystery? I think so. The first book was. This is the prequel, if you didn't know. And it is following the parents of the children from the first book. I also saw people saying they didn't read the first book and they still read this one, even though literally the very first sentence is a spoiler for the first book. And there's even a little thing before you go into the book that says, do not read this book if you haven't read the first book. But anyway, I just feel, not that the book itself was bad. I know a lot of people don't like this author's writing, which, to be honest, I don't think the writing is that bad. There's like a specific way that the books are written. I don't know how to explain it, but I don't mind that. But it wasn't for me, which it's fine. And I'm very happy for everyone who loved the first book, because they would have loved this. I wanted to try and film an update for this book while I can. I've read it ages ago and I haven't filmed. By the way, I was taking a picture. Although it does match the colors of this pretty well. I'm so glad I picked up this book for this video, because I had not heard of it otherwise, and I probably wouldn't have read it if I had not read it for this video. Hey baby. Also the cover, I love it. This is basically a historical fiction. It is set in 1953 in Tehran in Iran, and it is about a stationery shop, would you believe, where the main character meets this boy in the stationery shop and a romance blossoms between them. And then after a few months, she agrees to meet this boy in the main square of town. But hang on, I don't want to spoil anything that's not in the synopsis. Oh yes, suddenly violence erupts. Okay, in the chaos, he never shows, and for weeks she tries to desperately get into contact with him. We're obviously in 1953, so it's not like she can just search him up on social media, send him a text, call him, you know. And she moves on with her life, and she always has this question of why wasn't he there? What happened? In this short book, we just get a span of her life up until when she is elderly, and I really loved this. It is very emotional. I think I did cry. It also technically this has the miscommunication trope in it, really. I hate the miscommunication trope, but it was not a problem. Like, this is how to do the miscommunication trope without being annoying, because it wasn't just a stupid reason for like the miscommunication. Like, there was an actual reason for everything, and I loved this. And also, this is like the floppiest paperback in the history of all time, so it made the reading experience nice. I know that's like a weird thing to praise a book about, but my copy is great, and I'm so glad that I love it. See, this is exactly why I love doing this video. I'm just coming across some great books. Love my rat's tail right now. I just love reading. And I read this, I don't know, like a week ago. I've been really busy, so I'm very excited to continue on with this video and see what the rest of my TBR holds. I think I'm like halfway now. No, I'm probably not even halfway. I don't know. I'm also recommending this book if you haven't read it before. I don't pick up a lot of historical fiction books, but I should, because I honestly feel like I've loved most of the historical fiction that I've read, and yet I don't keep picking it up. Odd. But anyway, honestly, the mismatched eyes actually does match, because there is red and orange. What a success. And I got this as a used copy. Okay, you want to go? Let's go. To find you here. Okay, I just finished filming my book haul, and I'm waiting for Kian to stop playing with my stack of books so I can take a thumbnail. So let me just multitask and tell you about this book. This book was amazing. I don't know what I was expecting, but I don't think it was this, but it was a wonderful reading experience. Wonderful might not be the right word, because it does deal with a lot of heavy topics. Definitely check trigger warnings out if you're planning on picking this up, because I didn't, and thankfully I was fine. But this has like rape on page multiple times in the book, so yeah, definitely be wary. This is, I think, technically classed as a fantasy book. It does say on the back part memoir, part magic. So it is the author, Echo Brown's life, young adult life, which is why it's part memoir, but it has like a magical twist, which is extremely well done in my opinion. I tabbed this a bunch of times with relatable things as well as just stuff to do with the magic. Oh, hang on, the stacks of books are falling. Oh gosh, it's chaotic as always. But basically, I guess you would consider it to be, are there shoes in the background? Oh my gosh, Kian's shoes are in there. Don't know how long that's been there. Metaphors to convey the magic. She was saying that they had the ability to leave their body and sit on the roof to avoid having to be in their own body while bad things are happening. She also was saying that they had the ability to be able to see these dark veils hanging over people's heads, and some people, the veils had descended onto them, which I'm guessing was the metaphor for like grief and depression. They also had this ability to slow down and stop time. And yeah, it's basically about this main character and a few other people in her life that are also wizards. And it is about a lot of, like I said, hard-hitting dark topics that unfortunately have happened to this young girl in her life and how she deals with them as a wizard. And I feel like I'm not explaining this book good at all, because I just feel like, one, I'm not smart enough to, and two, I'm really distracted at the moment because Kian is like being wild behind the camera. But it's 5 stars, so I'm so glad that I picked this up for this video, because this has been sitting on my shelf for a while, and the fact that it has a magical element is probably what stopped me from picking it up so many times, because I don't often pick up magic books. But yeah, this was really great, and I would definitely pick up from this author again. Plus I also really like this cover. Hi, I keep forgetting to film updates, but I finally read the very hyped Legends and Lattes. It's funny because Sadie from the Library Lane is her Instagram. She posted that she was reading this at the beginning of the year, and then she posted to say that she is going to DNF it for now because she said that it was too boring for her. And I messaged her straight away and said, if you're finding it too boring, then I feel like it's going to be the perfect book for me. She does read a lot of fantasy, and as we know, fantasy is not my genre, so I thought that maybe a cozy fantasy is going to be for me. And I was correct. So everyone who loves this book will be very happy to know that I did enjoy this. I'm sure you don't need me to pitch it to you again, but it is about this orc who is hanging up her sword and is going to open up a coffee shop, and where she's opening up, all of the magical creatures there have never had coffee before, so she's going to introduce them to coffee, which is referred to in the book as bean water. And I thought this was so lovely, and the boring aspect of it, the funny thing is I feel like it's not boring enough for me, because the whole beginning of this book is really just about opening a coffee shop. So I feel like if you're used to super high action fantasy and that's what you like to read, then you're going to absolutely hate the beginning of this, because there's no action at all. It's just vibes, just opening the coffee shop. But once stuff did start to happen and they were having to, I don't know, I don't want to spoil or say whatever, I don't know, when someone is trying to like come after them, when there's actually action, that is when it was kind of like losing me. So it's funny because it is like literally not boring enough, but I still loved it. At the end I was thinking that I wasn't going to give it 5 stars, but then I realized no, it's my own fault, like for getting lost and distracted when the action started. And it's definitely 5 stars because I was absolutely loving this, the vibes at the beginning. I'm definitely going to reread this, and I think upon reread I'll probably pay more attention and not be trying to rush through it. Also, I found out that the author was an audiobook narrator before writing this book, so he narrates his own audiobook. So I did listen to the audiobook alongside it, which I did enjoy because he does like voices for the different characters, and it was really well done in my opinion. But yes, we have another success for this video because I did really love this. And okay, I'm being interrupted. Okay, I have finished Our Wives Under the Sea, And oh my goodness, what a book. This was crazy. I think I said in like a book haul or something that I wasn't sure what genre this is. I said I thought it was horror, but I don't really know. Yeah, it's definitely horror, but it is the type of horror that I feel like I'm able to pick up, because I feel like I don't pick up horror that much because I'm not really into like super scary books. Like I don't want to be kept awake at night. I don't watch horror films. Like I know some people really enjoy that sort of thing. Not me. Whereas this is more the type of horror that I'm able to read and still be able to go to bed at night and sleep. So this is about these two wives. We're getting dual perspectives. So one of the wives goes on this deep sea mission, which was meant to last for 3 weeks, but it ends up being 6 months before they come back, and they lose contact with the land while they're down there. Like their electricity is out, and so it leaves the wife who is on land thinking that her wife is just gone. So we're getting multiple perspectives. From Miri is the wife who stayed behind, so we're getting present day from her when her wife is back, and she's like, my wife is not the same. Like she came back and she's not the same. And then we're getting the perspectives of Leah, who is the one who went on this mission, and her perspectives are of her time like on the submarine. And it is super weird because yeah, obviously she's been gone for 6 months, and so there's a lot of discussions about, I guess, the wife who was left kind of grieving, but it's hard to grieve when it's not even confirmed that her wife was dead. Like she didn't know where they were. So there was some really great discussions about that. And there was also just some really beautiful writing, because this was just written really, really well. I loved it. Underlined a lot of quotes. From the 4th page, I was already underlining. I used to think there was such a thing as emptiness, that there were places in the world one could go to be alone. This, I think, is still true, but the error in my reasoning was to assume that alone was somewhere you could go rather than somewhere you had to be left. And another page. Something I learned very quickly was that grieving was complicated by lack of certainty. The grief process is also the coping process, and if the grief is frozen by ambiguity, by the constant possibility of reversal, then so is the ability to cope. And it was referencing, you know, people who have lost a family member who has just gone missing. So yeah, some really great discussions, some really, really great writing, some really, really great quotes. And then also just a really great story, because it was a horror that I really enjoyed, and I just thought that the end was so weird but fun. I loved this. What? I see why this made it onto so many people's list. Is this gonna make it onto my favorites of the year? I don't know, but I need, if anyone has read this, do you have any recommendations for things similar? Because I really want to test out, I want to test my reading taste and see if I like other things that are similar to this, because this was so fun. So yeah, 5 stars. Please believe me. Okay, what a nice surprise this book was. I had never really heard of this one before doing this video, or I don't know if I had heard of it, it didn't stick as something I was going to pick up, but I was very surprised by this. This is short stories, all written by the one author. How many is there? Like 10. They're very short. Yeah, so there's 11 short stories in this, and it is only a short book. As you can see, I did annotate it. Yeah, and I really, really enjoyed it. I did see some people's reviews saying that they didn't connect to it, they didn't like the writing and stuff like that, but reading is obviously subjective, we know this. I really enjoyed it. So one of the stories was dealing with a woman who had recently had a miscarriage, and I don't know if I haven't spoken about this recently. I know I'm sure I have in the past, but thankfully I have Kian as my rainbow baby now, but I did have a few miscarriages leading up to having him, so I obviously connected to that story. All the stories were kind of about different things. I enjoyed the first couple, I think, the most. There was a couple in the middle that I wasn't as connected to. This is also an author of color, so there are also some discussions on race, which, as we know, I love when that happens in books. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this, but check trigger warnings, because like I said, one was about miscarriage. There was one about suicide. Let me just read you the inside flap, because obviously the stories are so short, so I don't want to tell you what the stories are about and like spoil them because they're so short. The inside says, a 13-year-old girl watches while, hang on, I haven't got my glasses on. A 13-year-old girl watches her white best friend totter along the edge of a building roof. A woman who lost her child in its first trimester finds empathy and horror in the waters of a city aquarium. A mother protects her teen daughter from a predatory love interest by taking revenge over a very French supper. And two estranged siblings take a road trip with their dead father's ashes, rediscovering one another and reckoning with all the ways that trust can be betrayed and love can be redeemed. Milk, Blood, Heat is a collection of love and sex, birth and death, through the stories of ordinary characters confronted by extraordinary moments of violent yet often a beautiful reckoning. Okay, yeah, human connection, race, womanhood, inheritance, and the elemental darkness in us all. Clearly the inside flap is going to do a much better job than I ever can at describing a book. But yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna rate this. It's hard, I think, rating short story collections because some of the stories, you know, if I was to rate them on their own would be 5 stars and then some wouldn't. So it's not really fair, I guess, to rate the overall book 5 stars when not every story is 5 stars. But then I guess, is it fair to dock a star when some of the stories were 5 stars? So I don't know. I've been really struggling with my rating system this year. And I'm questioning just everything about myself. But just know that I did enjoy this and I was very pleasantly surprised to pick up a book that I was not otherwise planning on picking up. So yay this video. Okay, I have no updates yet, but I did want to show this book before I started it because it is a stiff paperback, which is just over 400 pages long. So it's going to look different when I am done with it. So I just want to show how it looks in its stiff paperback form and let's see what it looks like when I'm done. Well, she's been read. The spine is cracked. The camera's not focusing. It has taken me a while, but I have finished reading this book. It is a bit thicker than the books that I normally pick up, which is fine. This is definitely the type of book that is for people who are more character-based readers, not for people who are looking for a plot in their books, because this is just pretty much 400 pages of purely the characters and is more of a character study maybe, and just about the characters being so very human and making a lot of human mistakes and human choices. There were a lot of frustrating moments. Every single character that we were reading about was so very frustrating. I don't think there was a single character where I was like on board with every decision they were making and every one of their thoughts. But I spent so much time with these characters. It's over 400 pages that I've spent with them that I did really come to care for them, whether or not they were making questionable choices or good choices. So essentially this is about this family and multiple generations of the family, and it just pretty much chronicles a year in their life.
Hi.
Hey baby.
What is it?
I'm just talking about my book.
Let's go.
Mummy's book. This book.
I know where the bed.
Oh, you want to go to bed?
No.
Okay. The 3 main characters within this book that we are reading from
Two.
is Yolanda, who is in her 50s, and with her lives her son. Her son had a daughter when he was quite young. I think he must have been like 18. And the daughter is now 15 and she turns up on their doorstep heavily pregnant, ready to give birth within the month. So obviously that's going to be a new generation that is entering their family. We're also getting from the great uncle, so I guess it's kind of like 5 generations, I think. So yeah, like I said, we are just basically reading about these characters and their lives throughout this year, with the last month or so of the granddaughter Angel's pregnancy to giving birth and then having her young child. I will say I was getting a bit worried because I don't enjoy books where children are harmed or hurt or injured in any way. So there were a few very anxiety inducing chapters within this, but thankfully it was okay. Yeah, there was a lot of frustration within this book, but because I'm someone who doesn't really care about what the plot of the book is, as long as I'm happy to be reading from the characters, I definitely enjoyed it. As you can tell, I did tab it a lot. What I will let you know is if it is going to affect your reading experience. Like I said, the characters can be very frustrating, but also we're reading their thoughts on certain things that can add to the frustration. For example, Angel, the granddaughter, definitely has some thoughts that aren't great. She definitely describes people as being fat. I can't remember the exact quote. I probably marked it down. I'll have to have a look. As well as some homophobic slurs that she uses. Oh yeah, she describes her friend as, she says, she moves without urgency with her rolling fat girl walk. She also in the beginning of the book said, "I'm not fat," said Angel, and she wasn't. Just didn't happen to be a skinny old bone bag. So like I said, the characters are flawed, but it is, the point of the book I think is more just about just humans being humans. So I know this isn't going to be for everyone because not everyone is going to like that style of book, which is fine because reading is subjective. We all like what we like. But personally, I did enjoy this, and it is the type of thing that I would continue to pick up in the future. Things that, yeah, it's not like a plot. There's not like a beginning, a middle, an end, like an actual story arc like that. Like there is things happening, but it's just their lives for 1 year. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say about this. But yeah, I don't know, I'll think on it. I don't think it's going to be an all-time favorite book for me, but I definitely enjoyed my reading experience. Oh, okay. Okay, I have 2 of the short books to talk about that I haven't updated this vlog about yet, so let's do that now. And for the occasion, I have matched my makeup to the cover, but also to the theme of this book. Let's start with this one. I actually read this one a little while ago, like a couple of weeks ago, and I've honestly just forgotten to update on it. It was a very nice palette cleanser because I had been reading quite a fair few sad books back to back to back, and so this one was nice to throw in there as something that was less depressing. This one is about this little boy who goes into this grocery store and is obsessed with the lady behind the sandwich counter that is serving because she has bright blue eyeshadow on her eyelids. I did hear that this is meant to depict a neurodivergent boy, so that was very nice to read about. It was nice just to see his thoughts on the world, and I guess it was nice to read from the perspective of someone who is, I guess, considered to be quite naive. He didn't really understand some of the things that some of the other children were saying because I guess he didn't understand the world the way they did, but you know, who's to say what is the normal understanding of the world. I obviously don't want to spoil the book because it is so short, but he overhears some other kids talking about this lady who he names Ms. Ice Sandwich at the grocery store, and he doesn't really understand the way they're talking about her and why they are judging her in the way that they are. And it was just really nice to read from such a pure main character, and I really enjoyed my time in this book, even though it was short. Next up, I'll talk about Hex. This one again is very short, so I don't want to go on too much about it. I don't think it impacted me as much as I've seen it impact other people. However, the ending I did really enjoy, and it helps, I think, bump up my rating, which I still haven't decided on, which is interesting because I believe that in Jodie's video that I got the recommendation from, her favorites video, I believe she said that she originally rated it 3 stars and then she thought on it and eventually realized it actually was a favorite for her, which I definitely do that also with books, which is why I've been trying not to rate them on Goodreads straight away. So maybe I don't want to rate this one right now, but I probably would be around that middle 3-star range as well at the moment. This is about this girl in 1591 who is sitting in a cell on her last day of her life. She's going to be executed because they believe that she is a witch. What does the inside say? A depiction of what happens when a society is consumed by fear and superstition, exploring how the terrible force of a king's violent crusade against ordinary women can still be felt right up to present day. Yeah, I definitely thought it was good and it made some valid points. And I am glad that I read it, but I don't think it's going to be a favorite. But I don't know, who's to say that I'm not going to think about it and decide that I liked it more. Okay, so I have finished reading this book, which, wow. This was potentially not the time for me to be reading this one, but it was fine. The second chapter, well, wait, let me tell you what it's about first. This one is set in the future, and in the first chapter, we are reading from these people who are discovering in this cave someone who has been like, frozen and kept there for many, many years, and they end up, I guess, unleashing a sort of virus from the cave that had been like stuck in there. This is the worst synopsis ever. What does this say? Only to discover a virus newly unearthed from melting permafrost. The plague unleashed reshapes life on Earth for generations, yet while struggling to counter this destructive force, humanity stubbornly persists in a myriad moving and ever inventive ways. Okay, so yes, very reminiscent of the world that we were living in from 2020 onwards. As I've spoken about, I don't really enjoy books where children are harmed or hurt or anything like that. And the second chapter was all about the sick children from this virus. And there was this amusement park that essentially it is where parents take their children who are terminal and they have a fun day at the park, and then the last ride that they go on at the park, they die. Which was very difficult for me to read. It was also probably not the time for me to start this book because I was halfway through that chapter when I went to bed that night, and then the next morning I was up on the phone on hold to the hospital trying to organize a certain appointment for Kian. Not anything to do with a virus or illness. Okay, my camera battery died and I had to charge it. I really need to get another spare battery, but anyway, I don't really remember what I was saying about this book. I think I was saying that the chapter about the terminally ill children really was an anxiety-inducing chapter for me, but once we got past that, was a really interesting and well done book. I thought it was great. I did have a quick look to see what other people were saying in their reviews, and I saw some people say that they didn't enjoy the last chapter, but personally I loved the last chapter. Hi buddy.
What is mine?
Well, I'm just waiting for the food to cook.
But go cook.
Yeah, the food has to cook.
Cook.
When it's done, we can eat.
Cook. Mine. Cook.
Okay, I can never talk about anything. But another success. This video is going surprisingly well. I think if I had to rate this, am I gonna rate this 5 stars? I don't know. Did I even finish telling you what this is about? We're just getting different chapters from a bunch of people who are ending up being linked together in some way. This is not. That is a dinosaur, yeah. Oh gosh. We're getting chapters from people who are affected by this virus in a bunch of different ways. Okay, go find someone else's review if you want to know what this is about. My review is that I enjoyed it. Okay, did I just save the best one until last accidentally? Possibly. I was thankfully able to get this one from my library because all of the books that I used for this I either already owned, I was gifted, or I found used, and this was the last one that I had to get. And then randomly I searched all of them on the library and it didn't have any of them, but then this one came up, so I was waiting because someone had to return it. Finally they returned it and I read it all in one day pretty much. This one is basically about this woman named Penny. She is living by herself in her apartment. Her partner had already died, so she is alone and she's elderly, and she has a fall and she ends up getting taken to this like elderly living situation. Is elderly and she's kind of losing some of her memories, and it's kind of about, it's kind of like, is she just losing her memories and that's why things are weird, or are things actually going weird in this elderly home? This was really creepy and cool and I really enjoyed it. Plus it was a super quick read to get through, and I'm so glad that everyone had this on their favorites for me to read. And with that, we have the end of this video, finally, that I have been working on since January. And there we have the 15 books that I read for reading Booktubers favorites. Honestly, a project that I would like to take on every single year, whether or not I make a video about it or not. I think I should just do it like in my own time, because I mean, truly it is the whole point of Booktube to be talking about books and sharing it in hopes that other people pick up those books. So it's not surprising that the books that people are recommending are actually good. But did I find a new favorite in this video? Yes, many. If I was to predict any favorites that I think could potentially come from this video, obviously we're only in the beginning of the year, but things that could be in this video that might make it to my own favorites list at the end of the year. I really enjoyed The Vanishing Half. I think Our Wives Under the Sea is probably top of the list as far as these books go. I also really liked We Spread, which I have to return to the library, so I kind of want my own copy now because I feel like I'm going to reread it eventually. I definitely will be rereading this one at some point because I feel like I flew through it for this video and didn't slow down and take in everything that I needed to take in. So I think this one as well. I did really like Black Girl Unlimited, and I thought this one was really good. I don't know. This was a very successful experiment, but I think if I was to pick a top 4 right now, I probably would say these first 4 that I mentioned. I don't know what I would pick as my actual favorite, but honestly I liked pretty much every single book that was in this video besides one, which we can confirm now that will not be picking up any more young adult mysteries. Just at the end, I want to quickly add a couple of books that almost made it to this list. Obviously I only had 15 that I wanted to like I only had 15 spots in this video that I wanted to fill, the same as last year, otherwise this video would have gone on forever. But due to accessibility, some I just didn't end up. I was going to pick All Roads Lead Here, which were on a few people's list. I can't remember because I don't have my notes in front of me for that. But on Amazon, it was like $40 for the paperback, and absolutely not. But I do think I would like that one, and I would like to try Am I Rihanna Zapata. I think there was an Eric LaRocca book that I did want to try because I just want to read something from them. I've seen a lot about them. I can't remember why I didn't pick that one up. There was also Woman Eating, which appeared on a few people's lists, but when I went to get it off Amazon, it said it wasn't released in Australia yet. I think they must be bringing out a new paperback, so I bumped that one. Book of the Most Precious Substance was on a few people's lists, and I almost bought it on Amazon because I saw it for cheap, and then the next day when I went to get it, the price had gone back up. So then I was salty and didn't buy that one. And also The Weight of Blood is one that I already owned that could have come under that section, but I haven't read Carrie, and it's a retelling. This one was on a few people's lists, but I'm not sure. Let me know. Do you think I should read like the original and then read this? Like, do I need to? Does it matter? I do like to read source material before retelling, so I don't know. But of those ones that I just mentioned that didn't make the list, let me know if you've read any of those and you think I would like it based on what you know about my reading, if you've read any of those. Let me know if any of these 15 that I read in this video were one of your favorites. Sorry if this video was a bit chaotic. I am trying my best, but my life is chaos, and so am I. If you've made it to the end, thank you so much, because I'm sure this was a very long video, but I am so relieved to be finally done with it. And yes, I will be back for another video that hopefully does not take me 4 months to complete very soon, and I'll see you then. Bye.